Okay, amazing. So, well, just for the sake of time, we'll get started. And I'm sure a lot of people will either keep on tuning in. So just keep writing in as you come in. And if not, the webinar will always be recorded. So if you miss any parts of it, you can always catch up on it later. But we'll get started. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm super excited about this webinar. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay and can view my screen properly. Yes, everyone is good. Okay, amazing. Perfect. So, well, I really appreciate you all coming out, and a huge thank you to Ali and Asuka, who are our guests today, mainly Ali, who will be doing all of the presenting today, answering all of my questions. So a big thank you to her for making the time and for sharing all of her tips and tricks with us. So just to quickly introduce her before I let her take the floor, I asked Ali to come and speak today as she has almost 10 years of experience in the event planning industry. She has her own coaching and consulting agency that she started in 2020 called Flyberry Events, and she's currently based in Vancouver, but has some experience working in New York and Paris as well in event planning. So tons of tips for us, and I'm super excited to get started. So without further ado, I will let Ali take over and tell us more about who she is and about Flyberry.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you for having me. I guess the introduction summarizes my life. So, as you said, I am the founder of Flyberry Events, which is an event production agency based in Vancouver. We work with clients from corporate to fashion to professional services. What can I add? I am French, so therefore I can help clients in French and in English, which is really helpful, especially for our virtual event coaching. And I'm also a mentor at Immigration Employment Council of BC, and I am the National Director of Events for a nonprofit called Young Women in Business. And I'm really glad to be here today to discuss event planning.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And I guess now we'll get into it. So just to get everybody familiar with the sort of flow of how the webinar today will be going down, I'm just going to ask Ali a couple of questions, mainly starting with logistics, planning and budgeting, moving into ideas and inspiration, and then also talking about her creative process. So you'll see my questions on the screen to be able to follow along. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy. So to begin, we'll be discussing logistics and planning for planning and budgeting. So starting with the timing, how much time on average would you account for to plan for an event, and what are the factors that you consider when creating this timeline?
Okay, so we're starting strong. We're starting with a tough question. So short answer, it depends. But I'm going to give you a longer answer, obviously. It's actually hard to come up with an average number of hours because it depends on so many factors. It depends on the size of the event, the type of event you want to plan, if it's virtual, hybrid, in person. So I would say it can take a few weeks to a year and a half of planning. So for example, a fundraising gala, it would take between 6 months, if you have a great team, to a year. A panel discussion or workshop would take a few months. A webinar like this one, obviously will take less time than a gala or a conference. So it can take 1 to 2 months. A race will take from 6 months to a year. So it totally depends. But when I was working with L'Oréal when I was in Paris, so before I moved to Vancouver, we actually planned their global meetings with executives, directors. They were meeting for a week to discuss the new strategies of their luxury division. And we invited the ambassadors of a few brands in the group, like David Beckham or Penelope Cruz. So it took us a year to plan this event. It was a full team of 5, and it took us a year and many hours of work, especially a few days before the event, because there are so many details and moving parts to consider. And on the other end, I have planned seminars with a law firm here in Vancouver, who took me around 3 weeks to put together with the right topic, the right speakers, and all. So again, it really depends on the type of event and the size of the event as well.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for so much detail to that answer. And yeah, it's definitely a broad question to start off with, but always good to just kind of get a feeler. So the average is probably a couple weeks to about a year and a half, which is, you know, pretty average if you're inviting David Beckham to your event. You got to give him a little heads up. And how far in advance, let's say you need to book a venue for your event, what is your like latest date to book something?
So first of all, the venue is the first thing you should book when you're planning an event. So for example, if it's a public event or a festival or else, you will need permits and a lot of documentation. So you need to book your venue way ahead of time. For example, at the agency at Flybury Events, we are going around the city in Vancouver to do site visits in order to have, you know, a database of venues for any requests we may have. So first of all, you understand the market by doing that, but also you become way more effective when you plan your event, because again, it's the first thing you need to book. So, but let's say you're planning a conference for a foundation with people flying to the city, like the example I gave for L'Oreal. I would say that it would take up to 1 year of planning. So you want to book your venue at the beginning. You have to secure your date. And for example, hotels, they will open their bookings a year in advance for conferences and all these things. So they're aware of that. So to answer the question, how far in advance, once you have the idea of the event you want to plan, book the venue.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And now in terms of budgeting, in order to accurately plan a budget, I know I can speak for myself, and I've never even really planned an event, but I come to budgeting, underestimating, overestimating everything. It's so hard to determine. So how do you accurately plan a budget for your clients? And what are some things people typically underestimate or overestimate?
So I could actually talk about budget for like 45 minutes straight because there's so many things to say about budgeting, but it's very important. It's a very important part of event planning. And in general, I feel like people don't really understand how much an event costs. So to budget accurately, you really need to follow your checklist. You really need to understand why you're doing this event and what you want as a result, I would say. So then you can create your checklist and you can follow that to ensure that your event is relevant, is engaging, thoughtful, and also well attended, especially for nonprofit organizations, because their money is for social missions, right? So you need to be conscious. You need to be conscious of the money you spend, but you also want to see the results. You also want a return on investment with your event. So I would recommend anyone to use, I don't know, like a spreadsheet or budgeting tools, anything that can help you budget your event. And for what people underestimate, I would say that usually people underestimate the cost of AV and the cost of catering as well. Because when you hire a catering company, you also pay for the entire team who will deliver, set up, and serve, you know, at your event. Mm-hmm. So it will always be more expensive than in a restaurant. And I'm saying that because I have a few clients who, when they plan events in hotels, let's say, they're like, oh, but usually when I go to the restaurant in this hotel, it's less expensive. Yes, because it's not the same team who's going to take care of you. You need way more people to take care of your event. And for your question about overestimating the cost of something, I've never ever worked with someone who was overestimating the cost of something. It's usually the opposite.
That totally makes sense. Just thought I'd ask in case. Okay, awesome. And so you've talked about, how like the size of your team will definitely influence how much time in advance you need to prepare as well. So what are the types of things that help you determine what size of the event, what size of the team you'll need for a well-run event? Like, is it by the number of people who will be attending, by like just the size of the venue event, or anyway, I'll let you take the floor.
Yes, it's actually all of that. It is the size of the event and the type of event you want to plan. So I don't know, if you need people at registration, usually I put one person for every 100 guests at registration. Or if you need people, if you're planning a gala and you need people in the room to coordinate with the AV team, you can add one person there. So it totally depends on what you need to coordinate on site at your event. For example, I planned for a media company the 40 Under 40 Awards ceremony, which was a gala for 450 guests. I planned it on my own, but on site, I had a team of 5 people. And I would say that you need more, for 450 guests. But on the other hand, I also planned a golf tournament for an association last summer in Vancouver. And I was the only event person for 70 golfers, and it was fine. By the way, the tournament is coming back this summer on August 21st. So for anyone who is in Vancouver, if you want to join, let me know. But so for this summer, actually, we are expecting 144 golfers, and we would have a charity involved who will bring 4 or 5 volunteers. So again, the size of your team varies depending on how much involvement you need from the event team at the event.
Okay, awesome. And so what can go wrong will go wrong. So what are some things that you do beforehand with your clients, or put different measures in place to help them prepare for the unexpected?
That's a really, really tough question. I always say that planning an event is like producing a movie. So you have different teams to coordinate. You work with different departments. Your speakers are your main actors. You think about decor, script, everything, but you only have one take. So you need to understand that things will go wrong. Changes will happen last minute, and that's totally okay. In that moment, you need to choose your battles, and you need to concentrate on what is really important actually at your event. So if you want to work in events, you need to be a problem solver. This is the main quality you need to have. So depending on what the problem is, you need to have a plan A, B, C, all the plans you can, and you need to plan as best as you can as well. And I would say you need to surround yourself with a trusted team of suppliers, so you can rely on them. Yeah.
Like your vendors, your caterers, the people working at the venue. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely would make a big difference. And then as far as some tools go, you've mentioned like spreadsheets and like having kind of a great idea of what the venue is beforehand. What are some other sort of tools that people can equip themselves with for their event to run smoothly, if you have any good ones?
Yes. So I would say that event planning is like project planning, right? So you need to be really organized. I am a huge fan of to-do lists. I used to have so many notebooks around me. Then this year I decided to buy an iPad so I can have all my lists, digitally. So have a digital calendar, digital notebooks. But I would say for like softwares, for example, I would say Asana is really great for project management. It keeps you organized. You can share that with you can share that with your clients. You can share with your team and all. I would say also that Slack and Notion for communication with your team is great. And then Google Drive, to share documents with your vendors, with your clients, with everyone.
Okay, amazing, thank you. So someone is just asking if you will share your planning tools after, just a little quick list. So yeah, in the follow-up email that I'll be sending after this webinar, along with the recording, I'll be sure to get that short list written up for you guys. Okay, amazing. Now, moving on to the creative process. When someone comes up to you and they're like, they've engaged your services, they're asking you as their coach, I really want to plan this, or this is what my organization is, and I would like to create a super fun event for all of my attendees. What is your creative process? And can you take us through the steps of how you come up with creating different events?
Yes, it's a really good question, actually, about my creative process. I feel like, I've seen so many things that I can't really remember exactly where I saw them or in which industry or country. But yeah, usually I'm just thinking that this idea could be great for this event or this other event, But what I really love to do is to mix elements from other industries. So as you said earlier, I've been working in the event industry for almost 10 years with clients from so many different sectors. Can be fashion, beauty, law firm, media company, you name it, nonprofits, you name it. And I really like to take elements from other industries and to adapt them to my client and clients' goals. So also, when you think about nonprofits, for example, some nonprofits are more donor-centric and others are more mission-centric. So their goals would be different. But I always keep in mind that in event planning, you're not planning for yourself, but you're planning for your client. So you need to understand their brand, their values, their goals, and to match the elements of an event, I also work just very closely with my clients, and I check what they did before, how it can be improved. And also I just ask them, actually, what would you like to see at your event that you haven't had the chance to see yet? Yeah, I would say that's my creative process.
Oh, that's great. And I'm sure it's so different for every case and different scenario. And we will get a little bit more specific later on with certain ideas. But thank you. And in terms of top do's and don'ts when you begin planning an event, what are your top 3 or 5?
Should we start with the do's or the don'ts? Let me know.
Let's do the do's. Let's do the do's.
So for the do's, I would say that one of the first things is to understand your why. Why are you hosting this event? You need to keep that in mind during your entire process. Another do would be to plan ahead of time. The rush is never good in event planning, like never good. Also, you need to create content and to reuse it. And another do, I would say, is to work with the team you trust, a team of vendors, partners, colleagues. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, I would say it's another do.
A good team makes all the difference.
Definitely.
And not to be too negative, but what would your don'ts be?
Um, don't underestimate things and under budget things. I think that's one of the big mistakes, is to come up with a very, very small budget and having like big ideas, for an event. Don't think that everything will just run smoothly because you think that you thought of everything. It never happens, like never. And I would say don't underestimate the support of other people and event professionals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great points. Okay, amazing. And moving into ideas and inspiration. So in terms of either events that you have worked on or that you have seen, what are some of your favorite, more unique event ideas?
So again, I love mixing elements. So I am also all for sustainability, for creating more, sustainable events, also for the use of technology, for innovation in general. But when I think of the word unique, I think of venues, for example, unique venues, like hosting a fashion show in an opera. I think it's totally unique, or using a stadium for a Christmas party, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so like fun, just different mixing and matching of like scenarios, and yeah, no, that's such a great idea. And then in terms of highlighting sponsors or big donors, because that's such a huge part of organizing a nonprofit event, you usually do get sponsors. And so what could be some fun ways to highlight them other than just, putting their name on your flyer?
It's kind of a broad question as well, because it will depend on the nonprofit values and principles, right? As we
Mhm.
said earlier, it will depend if they are more donor-centric or mission-centric, because those who are more mission-centric, they will usually not really highlight sponsors and donors, but
Mhm.
everything will be more around the message and around the narrative. But for sponsors, I think we need to understand that there are usually 4 areas of sponsorship opportunities. Usually it's brand, content, exhibitor, and experiential. So for brand, these are usually the sponsors who want to have representation at the event, but maybe they don't really want to create content or provide content. They just want to have the representation at the event. So for those, maybe a virtual event can be fun with a virtual booth, or what we called also event gamification, which is like, some games actually that people can play on their phone or on their laptop. Maybe they can answer a question about the sponsors to be able to proceed in the game, or things like that, things that can be a little bit more immersive and memorable. And then for the second area, I would say, for the content is for sponsors that want to align with thought leaders and education. So for them, I would say there is nothing unique, but I would give them the opportunity to be involved in the keynote sessions or like webinars or things like that. Then the third area is exhibitor. For the exhibitors, these are usually sponsors that want an opportunity to meet with potential, customers at your event. So they want to be seen, so give them a booth or have a juice bar, they can sponsor, or a lounge area they can sponsor. So like that, they would really be able to meet their potential customers, because the customers would just go there and, take their time and chat with them. And for the fourth one, which is experiential, this area is usually for sponsors who want to engage with attendees, but more in a unique way. So I would just offer them the opportunity to do an activation at the event, something like an art project, for example, or a philanthropic project, something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. So much that I didn't know. Great. And then, well, I guess you sort of really spoke about this in my other question. But so in terms of like interacting with the organization's mission, I guess if you're a little bit more mission forward rather than like donor and sponsor forward, what could be a fun way of getting people to interact? And let's say people are just coming into the event and they're attending because it's like at a park close to their place or something. What can be a way to get people to interact and inform them about the organization's mission?
I think you can create little games, I would say, for example, a contest between the donors, you know. For example, I know that Greenpeace is planning small events here and there to clean the beaches here in Vancouver. And so you could create a competition, you know, about the teams. And yeah, a small competition actually, like who collects the most garbage or things like that. Or yeah, I think it could be fun. And because people want to be, they want to be part of something. They don't want to just give money, right? So finding ways to engage your people with your brand or mission, or to connect is really important. People now, I feel, are looking for what we call return on emotion, you know, ROE, return on emotion, and they're looking for connected experiences. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fun. Yeah, and then, so you've spoken quite a bit about content, and even just looking at your Instagram, I am confident that I am asking a content queen. So what are how do you go about creating unique content to advertise an event? How often should you post about an event? What should you post? Where should you share it? Just a big question just about content.
Yes, big question, especially because content is key. I really think that content is key. It helps you drive engagement before, during, and after your event. I would say don't post too much, don't post too often, but post before, during, and the day after your event took place. Where should you share? I would share on your website. I would share on your social media platforms, you know, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, depending on where your audience and donors are. And you should post photos of your events, photos of previous events, videos, for example, on your Instagram stories. You should also share photos on LinkedIn and, you know, tag people if you had speakers or people like that, so they can repost it and it would give you more brand awareness, right? So use every channel you have and where your donors are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's LinkedIn is really becoming like the super key social media platform, the unexpected one as well for content sharing for sure. But
Absolutely, I agree. I saw something a few months ago, like LinkedIn used to be this professional, you know, platform like social media, but now it's going towards more personal, you know, a more personal platform. And I think it's really interesting actually to see this shift in how LinkedIn is big in our lives now.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and are you, just in terms of like different social media networks, are you sort of a bigger fan of TikTok or Instagram, like video content or image content?
I used to be a big fan of Instagram until a year ago, I would say.
Yeah, TikTok just took over.
Yes, and I think it's just because, again, it's just a difference between photos and videos, right? I think that for events, for example, I think TikTok is really, really helpful because you can edit really easily your videos and everything. And I feel like you can share more things on TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the visibility is huge. We had someone ask if anyone still uses Facebook. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
So I don't want to be negative here, but I think that Facebook is on the downside now. I think you don't have a lot of people using Facebook anymore. I personally don't use it anymore. I am more on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm a lot on LinkedIn actually,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
on Facebook. But you still have people using it anyway. But again, it depends if you think that your donors are on Facebook or not.
Yeah, it totally, definitely depends on where your donors are, and especially if you have like a community or like your organization's Facebook groups, then it's probably worth paying attention to still. But yeah, in terms of like content flexibility, I guess TikTok and Instagram just offer more options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And okay, so I formulated this question thinking, and sorry, I keep looking over here. I have another screen over here, but I formulated this question with an organization in mind who maybe isn't as familiar with their donor base. If this is one of their first events, and you do obviously want to create the event with your donors in mind, but if you don't know them super well, what are some elements in an event, some surefire crowd pleasers, something that everybody can enjoy that you sort of have in your repertoire?
Mm-hmm. So again, it depends on what the nonprofit is doing and what mission they are supporting. But I guess even if you don't know your donors, because you're new, you still have an idea of the target audience you want to reach, right? So I think people pleaser elements are again, a little bit of competition and things like that. Like raffle tickets are always a people pleaser. Concerts like a quartet at a fundraising event, activations at a reception, or workshops about food, for example, like cooking classes. They work for everyone, I feel like. I think that any activity where people can bring home something always work, actually. So yeah, I'd say that.
It's a great tip. Lots of things I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, for example, the other day I went to an event where we were painting on chocolate bars. And I think it was fun. It's something I've never seen before. I think it was really fun. And people then, they take photos, they take videos. And so you can actually share that on social media, and it brings awareness to your brand or, your mission. So anything that people can take photo of and take home, I would say, yeah, is a people pleaser element.
That's such a great idea too, because I guess it doesn't even take that much material. Like you just sort of have your booth with a bit of paint and some chocolate bars. That's so fun.
Absolutely. Or the other day as well, I went to this fundraising gala for a nonprofit called Dress for Success. And they had at reception, they had a wall of wine bottles. And so you were paying a set amount of money. I can't remember how much it was, but you were paying a set amount of money and you could pick a wine on the wall, but all the labels were actually covered. So you couldn't know if your wine was worth more or less what you paid. But I think everyone likes wine, right? So, and I mean, as a French person, I was more than happy to have this activation.
Yeah, that's so fun. Sorry, I was just reading. Okay, there are a couple other questions in the chat. I'm going to ask my final question, and then I'll save a bit of time to read those and answer them. So I just wanted to do a quick little brainstorm with you and get your opinion on what type of event would you plan for the following charity. So the first one being an animal rescue shelter.
Animal rescue shelter. I would do an open house with, workshops where you can invite kids, because usually kids are the ones who want pets, or but you can invite kids and adults obviously. You can do a day where the pets or the animals are actually outside their cage, and then where kids can pet them, because usually you can't. So it would be a little bit like a pet cafe, but in your shelter. Or also, I think it's a great idea to do yoga with the animals, like yoga with puppies or yoga with kittens, with all the small animals. I think it could be fun and very Instagrammable. It will go on your social media for sure.
For sure. Yeah, that's such a good idea. Okay, and then if you are a nonprofit that offers veteran or first responder support programs.
Again, I would say open house with fun activities in the station. So, because usually we don't go to these stations, right? So if you can meet people over there and talk with people would be great. You can also have workshops about different things. Yeah, I would suggest an open house with fun activities.
And how about one for a women's empowerment group?
Women empowerment group. So as I said earlier, I'm part of Young Women in Business, so it's a kind of women empowerment group, and we do a lot of networking events, usually with high value speakers across the country. We also do a lot of workshops on diverse subjects. Can be career, finance, entrepreneurship, or it can also be about sexual harassment or the place of women at work or things like that. So yeah, a lot of workshops and especially networking events to connect.
Okay, awesome. And then I've just got the last two here. What would you plan for an organization that supports more underprivileged communities, especially if the communities that are being supported are abroad, more international?
So again, I'm sorry, but it depends on the mission.
For sure.
For sure. I would say you can create an exhibition, an art exhibition with different photos of these communities, I would say, to create awareness around the mission. Or you could also, for example, I would find a movie about these communities and the struggles they are facing, and I would invite people to watch this movie projection, and then I would open the floor to discuss the movie and to connect it with the mission you are supporting. I think it will be all about awareness around your mission.
And the final one would be for a food bank.
For a food bank, I think I don't have any unique ideas for the food bank. I think what people usually do is already great, like inviting people in their, centers and do, again, workshops. And I think it's, again, all about awareness about the mission.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thank you so much for answering all of those questions and for sharing all of your tips with us. And I've so far got just two more questions in the chat from user or from attendees. Sorry about that. So the first one was about sharing what you think an average sort of nonprofit's financial goal would be for like fundraising for a gala.
How much a gala is going to cost? Is that the question?
No, I believe the question was, what would a typical goal for money raised be?
I would say that it would be great if you could cover your cost, the cost of the gala in general, and then have more. It's a very difficult question to answer because it depends what the money is gonna be used for after the event. And how yes, I'm sorry, it's a very difficult question. Do we have a little bit more, can we have more specifics on that?
Yeah. Okay, capital money. Sorry, I'm not sure if I completely understood the question properly. Operational money. Okay, yeah. So I guess that question would totally depend. Like if your fundraising goal for the gala is to accumulate operational money, that'll just definitely depend on like the sort of budget and like if how much staff you have, or if you're more volunteer based, or if you have like rent to pay and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then Kimberly also asked, how much information do you share with your prospect on initial quotes? This would be to keep them from taking your blueprint and then fishing shopping for other event planners. So yeah, for Flyberry, for event coaching, how much do you initially share, if anything at all?
So it's a really good question because it happened to me when I first started in 2020. Actually, I got a request for an event and I think I shared way too much. And so this person didn't sign with me, but then ended up planning the event on their own. And it was exactly what I, exactly my proposal and everything. So that's a really good question. You need to be kind of careful about that. For event planning in general, I would say that I give an estimate because people want to know how much it costs, but I don't really break everything down, but I just give a ballpark number. And then now what I do for event planning is that I actually don't share any creative with the client before the client signs.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
No, that definitely
And
pretty standard, I think. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And for event coaching, so event coaching is totally different because I'm not here to plan the event with you. It's actually you who want to plan the event on your own, but need a little bit of support and need to understand maybe where to start or how to budget things. So I share everything I can with you on that because it's more about critical path and checklist and things like that. And I think that I think that my knowledge can actually really help people with that, but I will not go into creative with my clients.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then I guess that's the beauty of offering both services, is that if you want to have the event from A to Z, then it's like you have that one section, but then if people can also come to you to just like bounce their ideas off of you and get a good structure. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, does anyone have any other questions? I am monitoring the chat now. If not, I will I can also take any questions by email at a later date and try to get an answer afterwards. Okay, so Mason is asking, what exactly is an activation? Maybe you could speak a bit more to that.
Yes, absolutely. So an activation is usually an entertainment piece at your event. So let's say you are doing let's say you're doing a fundraising gala again, and you have a reception, before your gala, before the seated dinner or lunch, and you can have activations over there. So it's just activities actually for people.
Okay, yeah. So while they're just at the event, like different little things that people can do to be entertained throughout. Okay, amazing. And also asking, what are some best practices for getting sponsors, and what is a standard sponsor fee?
The standard sponsor fees. So the best thing to get sponsors, I would say, is to look at what the competition is doing. When you look at other events, usually they will feature their sponsors. You will have the logo on the website or anything. So you can check what kind of sponsor you would like to talk to, what kind of sponsor would make sense for your brand mission, or for your nonprofit. And the price, it totally depends on the size of the sponsor. It can be also a partnership that you do with a small, company. So they would get more awareness. You would get more awareness. You can work this partnership. But for sponsors, it totally depends. It varies. If you're going for the big corporations, obviously it's going to cost you way more money.
Okay, so I guess this is more of a question for me. How can Zeppi help with making a virtual or in-person event be successful for raising funds? So I will actually be sharing the link to our demo, which is happening in 2 weeks, which is sort of an advanced workshop of all of the tools in our ticketing forms. So along with the amazing ideas from Ali and all of her tips, you will also have access to our tool, which is always 100% free for all of your ticketing needs, and also your participant management. So thank you for that question. And then I don't know if this is something that you're willing to share, but somebody has asked, what would your rate for coaching be?
Yes, for sure. So for event coaching, so I'm dividing it into separate things. So I have these, actually three. I have these event coaching, I would say, service that is at $200 per hour. So it's usually, if people have a few questions about their event, we can definitely just talk about it. And I will try to give you answers. To give you, sorry, I'm looking at the chat at the same time. I should.
Yeah, it's a bit distracting, I know, but it's great. I love it when people are writing in, and thank you for the compliments.
So it's actually just a 60 minutes call. It can be on the phone, it can be on Zoom, again, to answer questions. And then I have this event consulting piece, which is more, it's divided in 3 sessions, and the cost is $800, where actually I help you go through the critical path, the checklist and everything, and the budget for your event.
Yeah, so a nice range of services, basically from like very hands-on to consulting or coaching.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, for anyone who didn't catch the beginning, Flyberry is based in Vancouver. So anybody on the West Coast, or even if you're on the East Coast, you can also hit up Ali, and I'll share her contact information in my follow-up email. So I guess if that is it for the live questions that people have for now, I will let you go. But thank you so much for coming and for chatting with me and with our users. It's been super great. I'll be sharing the recording with everybody, and I will also be making this public, so it'll be up on our blog. And I will also be sending over Ali's information. So thank you all of you, and thank you so much, Ali.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay, have a great rest of the day. Oh, everybody's saying amazing, thank you.